Fettuccine Alfredo is my favorite pasta, that's how it goes. Fettuccine Alfredo makes me wanna crawl in through your window. We are the Fettuccine Alfrebros.
Wow, that's really good, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, hello everybody. Welcome to the first AlfredoCast ever. This is very exciting. Yeah. This is the new podcast that we're starting, where we talk about our feelings and experiences and just about Fettuccine Alfredo in general.
Right.
So this first podcast is going to be sort of, it might be a rocky start, but we're just going to start setting up the things that we're going to be doing in every episode moving forward. We'll talk a little bit about our experiences with Fettuccine Alfredo. We're going to talk about the history of Fettuccine Alfredo a little bit. And we're going to play some games. Before we get into it, I do want to mention, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but today's episode is sponsored by StegVPN, which is a VPN service that'll help keep you safe from hackers and also lets you watch some fun media if it's not available in your country. We'll talk a bit more about it later, but I just want to mention right up front that we are sponsored, so thank you to StegVPN for sponsoring the episode.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's kick this off and just talk about our individual experiences with Fettuccine Alfredo. So, RJ, when were you kind of first introduced to Fettuccine Alfredo? Like, when did you fall in love, would you say, with the dish?
Oh, God. That's, that takes me back a ways, actually. I would say... Okay, there was a point, like, are you talking about the first time I tried it? Or, like, when it was, like, that's what I wanted to, dedicate my life to? Like, what?
I'd say talk about both. When was, let's first talk about, when you first tried it. Was that the same moment that you fell in love with it, or was it a different moment?
No, so it was actually kind of weird. It wasn't actually, like, a, love at first sight type of thing for me. It was actually, like, I tried it. I think it must have been like 8 or 9 years ago. I tried it, and I did love it, right? Because it's Fettuccine Alfredo.
Yeah, of course.
So you can't not, Yeah.
But
I think it must have been about 2 years later when I think I was at a friend's house, and they had do you know those things, like, it was like a buffet-style thing with, like, a bunch of family over and friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they put out Fettuccine Alfredo, and I tried it, and I swear to God, it was like the most delicious thing. I mean, obviously, but
I know the feeling for sure.
Yeah, that was the moment when I was like, can I curse?
Sure.
I was just like, damn, like that's really good,
Yeah. I had a similar experience. For me, it was the first time. It was the first time I tried it. I did just fall in love. I wouldn't say that I knew that, it was going to become my life, but I definitely, it was my favorite dish. It's even hard to remember, but, one of my earliest memories is being taken to Earl's Bar and Grill in Vancouver by my parents, and I was just ordering food. I was looking at the menu, and I think they ordered it for me because they thought I'd like it, because it is a simple dish, simple but beautiful, but it is a simple dish, and they were like, oh,
well, it's deceivingly simple.
Exactly, it's the kind of thing that is so appealing to the masses in the best possible way, and so they definitely thought that I'd like it, and I tried it, and just every time I went back, they'd be like, do you want something else? And I'd say, no, I don't. I want the Fettuccine Alfredo. Do you want this? No, I don't. I'd get the occasional chicken strips, but I really just dedicated my palate to the Alfredo. And
well, once you have, I think it's called, like, the spark moment, is what people have when they realize, like, it and the weird thing is that it doesn't always happen to people, right? Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people who haven't dedicated their lives to Fettuccine Alfredo, but the ones who have, it's like they have that spark moment where it's like, okay, this is it, like, this is what I've been waiting for.
Absolutely. All of my friends that I've talked to that have also are kind of in the same boat as me and are doing Fettuccine Alfredo related things with their lives. Everyone that I've talked to has said the same thing. And if you ask them about their stories about when they first tried it or when they fell in love with it, mostly, none of them are ever like, oh, I don't really remember. It was just something always a part of my life. They all have that one singular moment where they were like, no, this is it. This is mine.
Totally.
This is my life. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'd say it was a few years ago that I just sat down and I was at, just a small kind of mom and pop restaurant, and they made a killer fettuccine Alfredo, just amazing. It was that sort of homemade feeling to it, even though it was a restaurant. It just felt homemade, and eating it, it was that sort of moment that I was sitting there like, this is it, I can't imagine doing anything else but being devoted to fettuccine Alfredo.
That's incredible, man. That's really great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and everyone's, see, the beautiful thing about it is that everyone's is different,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's also part of what inspires me is hearing the stories of these people, because everyone comes up a different way,
Exactly.
I mean, we all get to the same end game, but everyone goes through, and it's really beautiful, honestly. I mean, again, going back to, I'm kind of the outsider in this, because it wasn't like, it wasn't an early childhood memory. I tried it, and I didn't, for some reason, I just didn't get the spark until, it must have been the second time I tried it, but that's when, of course, I knew.
Of course, yeah. And that's okay too, Everyone sort of picks it up at their own pace. I mean, I remember I used to absolutely hate broccoli, and now I don't mind it. And it's that kind of thing of, palates change, and you might have absolutely loved fettuccine Alfredo, and then the next day, you've sort of matured a bit more, and then you're ready to devote your life to it.
Right.
So
yeah, I don't like broccoli, but I can understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's sort of just an example, and I would say that most people that I talk to, about fettuccine Alfredo, most people don't devote their life to it. I'd say a solid 75% of people I talk to aren't sort of ready to.
I don't know about 75. That's a little
that's
high
just
to me,
sort of people that I've talked to. I mean, it's
okay.
It's different for every person, just in my area at least, and
right.
That majority of people are just, of course they all love fettuccine Alfredo, but it's not something that they would, they have other things that they want to do with their lives, and that's fine. If you are listening to this podcast and you aren't, gonna spend your whole life making and talking about fettuccine Alfredo, that's completely okay, and that's great. But, I don't understand you, but I am okay with your lifestyle.
Although I will say, I would encourage anyone listening to try and find, because for me, it wasn't the first. I would give it another shot. If you tried it and didn't have that spark moment, the second time it can happen. Even the third I've heard of. It's rare, but sometimes it's the third time that finally pushes you over that edge.
Absolutely. Don't deny the Alfredo before you give it its due chance.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, man. That was beautiful.
Yeah, of course.
And I think over the course of the next few episodes, at least of this season, we're going to talk more and more about our experiences. So we shouldn't talk about it all today, but that's a nice sort of insight into where we're coming from and why we're doing what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah, so I think because it's the first episode, it seems only fitting to talk a little bit about the history of fettuccine Alfredo.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going to, if you guys don't know, this is something of an announcement because it is the first podcast, but we are going to be doing our own, RJ and I are doing our own individual cooking series on how to make fettuccine Alfredo. He's doing the basic course, I'm doing the professionals course. And
right.
In my course, I am going to be opening it up with a bit of the history of fettuccine Alfredo, but I do still think it's fitting to talk about it on our first podcast.
Well, if I can step in for a second,
sure.
Actually. Yeah, well, basically, the way that we've broken up the course for you guys is we have a beginner. Well, it's not, okay, a lot of people look at courses labeled beginner, and they think, what can I learn from this? Because, it kind of has a bad connotation to it sometimes. But if you're just getting started in the Fettuccine Alfredo game, there's a lot you gotta go through to really kind of get your bearings, And that's why we have the beginner course for you guys, is I'm gonna walk you through step by step, like what my process is. So when you guys are making fettuccine Alfredo, or you just honestly, some people I've heard find it relaxing to just put it on and listen. If you want to do that, that's fine too. And then once you get to that next step up, then Octavian, or Chef Blue, I'm sorry, we'll get to that later, but you can tell them what you're going to offer them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely agree. I mean, I know I could have really used your beginner course when I was starting out. It would have made things a lot easier.
Oh, yeah.
Because it took me a couple of years to get to the point where I could make a really mean fettuccine Alfredo. And having a beginner's course there would have probably made it more like a year and a half, which would have been really great. And my professionals course is going to be a little bit more about sort of fettuccine Alfredo studies. You're going to learn a bit about the history, a bit about the current events of fettuccine Alfredo. So there's going to be that sort of cultural aspect, but we're also going to learn a lot more about making it from scratch. So of course, when you're starting out, you don't want to start out making it from scratch, because that's a whole other.
Oh no!
That's a whole
God,
other thing.
We've all been there.
Yeah, we've all tried it. We've all tried it when we're starting out, because we think, no, I can do it, and it just doesn't work out. So I'm going to be walking through, after you've done his beginner's course, I am going to be walking you through how we're going to make it from scratch. We're going to be making everything from scratch, and it's just going to go a little bit more in depth on the process, maybe a bit more about how you can personalize your fettuccine Alfredo, because there's nothing more embarrassing than a chef asking you what changes you've made to your signature fettuccine Alfredo and you not knowing. So we want to get you to the point. I mean, yeah, we've all been there. Again,
you're saving a lot of awkward situations. You know that.
And that's the goal. And I'm going to be really sort of guiding you through how you can really make it your own, because fettuccine Alfredo, what's beautiful about it is it's always amazing, but it's never the same. And
oh my God, yes.
So that's a little preview into the course, into my professionals course, and so those should start releasing in the next few months, depending on when we can finish them up. And but yeah, they're shaping up. They're going to be really great and really useful, and I think they're going to be a lot of fun too. I think they're going to be a lot of fun for you listeners and you watchers and people who might have been like, oh, I want to make fettuccine Alfredo, but I'm scared, Yeah. Because I feel like I was there for a long time.
That's a common thing.
Yeah. I mean, how long did it take you to really start making it after you fell in love with it? I mean, it took me a while.
I wouldn't say it took me that long, because I fell into the same, if you want, I don't know if you want me to kind of go into my story.
Go ahead, go into it.
Yeah, well, so for me at least, again, it was the second try, and that's when the spark happened. And then there was also a little bit of an in-between period, like 4 or 5 months, I would say, before I really kind of committed to it and was like, you know what, I'm going to try and make this myself. And again, like we're talking about, the reason we have these beginner courses for you is I said, oh, I'm going to make it from scratch. Bad move. Obviously, I didn't know it then. If these courses existed then, I'd be in a much better place.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I tried making it from scratch. Complete failure. And I would say I had my first dish. Wasn't that long. It was, let's see, I was still living. I would say probably about 3-4 years was the time in which I was comfortable in saying, like, okay, I can make standalone fettuccine Alfredo,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean. I personally, after I fell in love with fettuccine Alfredo, my parents would make it, or I'd get it at a restaurant, and so I'd say from about 2006 to 2012, I just sort of was a bit of an Alfredo freeloader, if you will.
Oh yeah.
And and I never felt the need to make it personally, even though I did love it. It was just that sort of thing of other people will make it for me. And then I started really craving fettuccine Alfredo, and sometimes I want it. I want to eat it right now.
Restaurants are expensive too.
They are.
Let's not forget that.
Yeah, and you don't have to spend that much money to make fettuccine Alfredo. And so I started out making it the normal way, but then after, a couple of years, I thought that I was ready to make it from scratch. And
Yeah.
And that was a couple of years from me just making it, sort of in the basics way, and I still wasn't great at it. But
Which is also hold on, let's just not, I don't want to, again, going back to that beginner stigma, if we'll call it.
yeah,
You can still make some really great fettuccine Alfredo without making it from scratch.
absolutely. I mean, some of the best fettuccine Alfredo I've had has been, I've asked the chef, like, how did you make this? It's like, yeah, I picked it up at the store. And
Totally.
it's like, let's not discount store-bought, fettuccine, because it is absolutely delicious, and you can make amazing dishes with it. And that's the beauty of the dish, is that even in its most basic form, which isn't necessarily the store-bought, but even if you boiled it down, pun intended, to its most basic form, it's still absolutely delicious. And
Right.
And so that was the thing. I was making it like that, and I was doing, again, it's very hard to mess up fettuccine Alfredo and make it bad, but I wasn't reaching its full potential, and that's when I tried to make it from scratch, and I realized I wasn't quite there yet. And
Which is okay. People blossom at different times.
absolutely,
right?
and that's when I sort of started on my journey, and at that point, and now today in 2020, I feel like I'm very qualified, at making fettuccine Alfredo to now instruct people on it, because I've been doing I've been doing this for a long time now, and I'm
Trust me, I know. Yeah.
and so I'm definitely ready to share some of the secrets, and I'm gonna try to take everything that I've learned and put it into this course, so that maybe instead of it taking from like 2012 to 2020, like taking like 8 years to get where I'm at, maybe it'll take like 6. That's my goal.
That's great, man. That's really good.
Yeah, and so yeah, do you have anything else to add that you want to talk about before we move on, or
Well, I'd like to say that no matter where you are in your fettuccine Alfredo journey, it's never too late because a lot of times people fall into a rut of, I don't feel like I can level up,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I can take my fettuccine Alfredo to the next level. And that's really, I'll let you obviously talk about the professional course, but once you get past that beginner step, which is honestly, if you've made it that far, that's the hardest step along the, along the journey, is that first step. Once you've made it past that, there's always a way you can level. Your fettuccine Alfredo can always get better, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it, is it's never finished,
Of course, yeah. I'm still improving on mine. Yeah.
Of course, we're all students in this fettuccine Alfredo world, in the classroom,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the best advice you could probably give someone listening right now.
Yeah.
And I really hope, I know that our listeners are going to be, we're going to have a lot of fettuccine Alfredo connoisseurs, but I would love it if some beginners were listening and could just take something from what we're saying, and if you're going to take only one thing, from everything we say today, I think that's a really great thing to take away.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the history of fettuccine Alfredo. This is really
right.
fun. It's a really, if you guys haven't read the Wikipedia page for fettuccine Alfredo, it's a really fun read. It goes by quick, but it's very entertaining, and it's enlightening too. If you want to, again, once you're moving more into the professional Alfredo making, you're gonna want to sort of read up, which is again what a lot of the professional course is about. But even for beginners, it's good to hear. So I thought I'd go through and talk a little bit about the history. So yeah, let's talk about it. This dish dates back to a long time ago. I mean, serving fettuccine with butter and cheese was first sort of mentioned in the 15th century. It was mentioned in the recipe for Roman pasta, which was by Martina da Como, who's a northern Italian cook who was active in Rome. And it was sort of, I'd say though, modern, this is sort of my opinion, but modern fettuccine Alfredo really was created by Alfredo dell'Iendlino. And he was a cook who was active, he was born in 1882, and he sort of popularized it, and without Alfredo dell'Iendlino, I don't think that we would be eating fettuccine Alfredo today, which is insane to think about.
That's crazy.
And so yeah, I'm gonna talk a lot about it in the United States and in North America, because that's where we are, and that's sort of the most relevant to us, and I'm guessing our viewers as well. Yeah. So Alfredo's fettuccine recipe was starting to become really popular in the United States by about 1922. It was being reported on by like American travelers who would go taste the dish and then come home and just rave about it, because again, once you taste this, I mean, we both know the feeling. And
right. Oh my God, yeah.
So I can imagine if I was in 1922 and I just tasted Fettuccine Alfredo for the first time, I would probably be, I would come home raving about it
compared to the food back then, Jesus.
I know,
right?
1922. I mean, yeah. And so yeah, he really he got flown over to the United States. He got taken over. He was, he cooked it everywhere. He started restaurants, and today, of course, Fettuccine Alfredo is really popular in restaurants like Olive Garden. If you've been to Olive Garden, you probably have tried their Fettuccine Alfredo, and it's it's really great because it's
really
Fettuccine Alfredo. It's really fantastic. But yeah, his restaurants were really the first that made pure Fettuccine Alfredo. And they were incredibly popular. And it's crazy to think about this dish becoming popular in 1922. And then nearly a century later, right?
Yeah.
If you ask someone, what's the best dish, they'll, 7 times out of 10 tell you it's Fettuccine Alfredo.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. What's honestly kind of funny, just that you're mentioning the history, I'm sure you've heard it among the Fettuccine Alfredo community. It's like a well-spoken thing, but maybe for our new listeners, there was a poet, an Italian poet, obviously, Ludovico Arisotto, right? Mm-hmm. And in his book Suppositi, he came up with a quote, and if you go into Fettuccine Alfredo communities, you'll see this on signs everywhere. Mi piace la buona pasta, right? Mm-hmm. Which roughly translates to I love good pasta, Yeah. Which is from such a wise man, you can't deny the history and the significance that Fettuccine Alfredo has had throughout since, the 15th century, which is crazy. It's crazy.
Of course. Yeah. And this actually kind of, you're segueing beautifully into this quote that I wanted to mention, which really, it was by this American restaurateur. His name's George Rector, and he was writing about Alfredo's fettuccine. This original pure Fettuccine Alfredo. So I want to do a little exercise with the audience out there. I'd love it if, and you can participate in this too. I would love,
great.
To just, while you're listening to this, just close your eyes and try to imagine that you're back in the early 1900s and you are at this restaurant that George Rector went to and that he's writing about. And I'd just like you to imagine yourself there, and, I did it, and it's a really beautiful thing. So close your eyes as I read this quote. The act of mixing the butter and cheese through the noodles becomes quite a ceremony when performed by Alfredo in his tiny restaurant in Rome. As busy as Alfredo is with other duties, he manages to be at each table when the waiter arrives, with the platter of fettuccine to be mixed by him. A violinist plays inspiring music. Alfredo performs the sacred ceremony with a fork and spoon of solid gold. Alfredo does not cook noodles. He does not make noodles. He achieves them. Thank you. Yeah, and you can open your eyes now, and
man.
I think it's really beautiful. It really.
That would be a great exercise to get people in who haven't felt the spark yet. That might trigger it.
Yeah, it's very possible. If you,
It's powerful stuff.
if you want to listen back to this part of the podcast while you're eating fettuccine alfredo, I think you might get the full experience. I know I did last night when I did that, and yeah, I think it just really does show what passion he had for this dish. The passion that we all share, and I think all that we can do is kind of aspire to be like him.
No, 100%, man. You're totally right.
Yeah, because he's a busy man. He runs a restaurant, but he was at each table. He did it himself, and that's because he loved it. It's pure love for the dish.
Look, there's a certain passion that this dish brings out of people that I haven't seen in anything else, honestly. And people talk all the time about the arts and about fine arts and film and music, right? But when you sit down and think about what has been throughout history, for the most part, just a staple of the human willpower to live and passion and motivation, I mean, it's fettuccine Alfredo.
Absolutely. I all arts are important, but I feel like the ultimate, as you said, the ultimate showcase of human spirit is definitely this dish.
Yes.
And that's why I think it's so special to so many people.
No, 100%, man.
And that's also why the history, which we won't go too in depth to, we're kind of about at the end, because again, I want to talk about it on my show, and we'll talk about it more on the podcast. But again, the history is so interesting to read because it's so full of conflict and drama and passion. It's the creation of the dish really is just like the dish, and I just think it's a beautiful thing. I'm sorry, I got a frog in my throat. Sorry about that. Great. So, before we move on, we're about halfway through the podcast. So before we move on, because we're gonna play some fun games, we still have a lot left to do. But before we move on, I do want to talk a little bit about our sponsor, StegVPN. When I'm eating fettuccine Alfredo out at a restaurant or a cafe or at like Starbucks or something, and I'm logged onto their Wi-Fi, in the back of my mind, I always feel like I'm kind of worried about hackers stealing my data. But since I got StegVPN, I feel really safe and secure on the internet, like wherever I go. And not only that, but if I wanted to watch like a TV show or a movie while I'm eating my fettuccine Alfredo, it's not like on Netflix in my area. StegVPN can let me sort of appear to be in a different country or a different region so that I can watch the shows that I want no matter where I'm eating. So big thank you to StegVPN for sponsoring the very first episode of the podcast. And they've actually been really nice, and they've prepared a little treat for you guys. When you sign up, if you use the coupon code Alfrebros, you can get 35% off your first 2 weeks of the service, which is really fantastic. So I've been using StegVPN for the last 2 weeks, and I've been absolutely loving it. And what about you? Have you been using it?
No, man. But it sounds great, and for the price that they're offering, for you guys out there, it's a steal. I'd highly recommend it. I know that, Octavian, you used it before, and you seem to be a happy guy. Yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, yeah, give it a shot. Why not?
So, yeah, huge thank you to StegVPN for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. And once again, when you're signing up, use the coupon code Alfrebros for 35% off your first 2 weeks.
That's ALFREDO, Alfrebros.
No, ALFREBROS for Alfrebros.
ALF.
Yep.
Alfrebros.
Okay. No, ALFREBROS. And
Alfrebros.
Yes, Alfrebros, and that'll get you 35% off your first 2 weeks.
Yes. Yeah. Nice.
Which is a really great deal.
Okay.
Fantastic. Okay, let's get back into the podcast. And I've got a little fun game. So, of course, this is the first episode, so we're sort of setting up traditions that we're gonna sort of carry through to the rest of the episodes.
Ooh.
And I think every podcast episode we are going to be playing a fun game. It's always going to be different. It's always going to be fun. Today we're starting it off with a game that I like to call Two Truths and an Alfredo. So this is sort of a play on the Two Truths and a Lie game that you might have played at parties.
I have played that game.
I have, yeah, me too. And so in this game, what I'm going to say is two true facts about Fettuccine Alfredo and one lie, which is the Alfredo in the title. And you guys are going to have to guess which is a lie. And by you guys, I mean you.
Right. Okay.
So this is sort of a fun way to get to know Fettuccine Alfredo. You're going to learn some fun facts, and yeah, we'll see how good I am at lying about Fettuccine Alfredo.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so I'm going to say 3 fun facts about Fettuccine Alfredo, and then you're going to have to tell me which one is the lie. Are you ready?
Okay.
February 7th is National Fettuccine Alfredo Day. That's the first one. The second one.
Ooh, okay.
Alfredo Dell'Elia was born in 1885 and died in 1991 at age 106. So that's the second one. The third one is that Alfredo Dell'Elia's original Roman restaurant is still open to this very day. Okay,
that can't be true. Is that true?
So
I guess I have to guess. I guess that's my job.
Yeah. So do you want me to repeat them or do you have them?
So the first one was National Fettuccine Alfredo Day, February 6th. I know that to be true.
February 7th.
I know that to be true.
Yeah.
February 7th. I know that to be true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, 106.
So yeah, the second one is that Alfredo Dell'Elia was born in 1885 and died in 1991 at age 106. And then the third one is that Alfredo Dell'Elia's original Roman restaurant is still open today, to this very day.
My grandma lived to 98.
So yeah, the second one is that Alfredo Dell'Elia was born in 1885 and died in 1991. And then the third one...
I don't think that's true. I think that's the lie.
Well, I'm sorry, but you're correct.
Yeah,
so,
I knew it.
The truth is he actually died at the very early age of 55.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I know. It was really unfortunate. It's really sad. And I know that we just played a fun game. I know we're having fun on the podcast, but I would really love to just take a moment of silence just to honor this guy because of how much he's given us. So if we could do that really quickly, just take a moment of silence.
What's great about my beginner course is we are giving you guys a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get into the Fettuccine Alfredo game and really get up to the professional level. And that's really what we're trained to do. Although, Octavian, I know we have our fights, I really want you, the viewer, to kind of outgrow my pants. I want you, the viewer, to outgrow my beginner course and eventually move up to Chef Blue's incredible professional course. And so the beginner course, think of it as training wheels, right? When you first learn to ride a bike or a motorcycle, you can't just get right on, and you can't just drive on 2 wheels. You got to start with 3.
Absolutely.
The reason we have this beginner course to act as your training wheels. Now, we don't want you to stay with training wheels. We want you to spend the time it takes, however many months, years, however many days, months, years it might take, we want you to eventually move up and you know, say one day, look in the mirror and say, you know what, I don't need these training wheels anymore. I can make fettuccine Alfredo, and I'm confident in me, myself, and I to make professional level, duty quality fettuccine Alfredo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, you definitely want to get to the point where you can make fettuccine Alfredo without training wheels. And
Yes.
I at the same time, I definitely don't want to, because again, we talked about the sort of stigma around basics and that word and when it's used in something. But
Yeah.
think about, I mean, where would we be without training wheels? Like when I was learning to first like ride a bike and a motorcycle, like if I didn't have those training wheels, then
You can't do it.
I would have died. Yeah, probably, because I
Yeah.
would have fallen off and hit my head. And you know, so
Ouch.
ouch, yeah. And so it's that kind of training wheels are incredibly important. And you can't just like when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I couldn't just hop on a motorbike and just go. You know, that's just not how learning works. You have to, there's a learning curve, and yeah, eventually they are going to outgrow beginners, and that's a beautiful thing. But it doesn't
Yeah.
discount the importance of the beginner's course. And I think what you've done with
No.
the course is really beautiful, man.
Thanks, man. And going back to Ludovico Ariosto, again, the guy who came up with the famous quote, has another quote actually relating to this. Octavian, I don't even know if you know this quote.
Wow.
But he, as he says in his book, non virginarti di allerne letu rote, which is beautiful. The translation sounds honestly as beautiful in English, but it basically says, do not be ashamed to train your wheels. Because we're all there. We all start training our wheels with training wheels.
Yeah.
And it's a step. It's a stepping stone that all of us have to take. So you're not behind just because you're training your wheels. You'll be behind if you forget that and you just go on that motorcycle freehand, you know?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, man, that's a beautiful quote. I don't think I have heard that one, and I think it perfectly sums up kind of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I'm very excited for people to start learning.
I hope you guys are
Alfredo.
excited as we are. I mean, because we put a lot of work into this course for you guys.
Yeah.
And I think you'll really, I mean, and it's free. It's free. We're giving you this, all of our secrets on YouTube for free.
It's gonna be, you know, these courses, you're getting hours and hours upon minutes of content for free on YouTube, and it's really incredible information for myself and you know, we're going to be bringing in experts too, like other experts other than ourselves, obviously, and you're getting all of this information, and so I think it's really worth subscribing. You know, subscribe and like and turn on notifications, because you're really not going to miss what we have coming up in the next few months and years. You know, this decade is going to be jam-packed of content. I'll tell you that much.
Looking forward to it, man. Let's do this. I'm
yeah.
excited for you guys.
Me too. I'm this is probably the most important thing I've done with my life.
That's nice.
Well, thank you guys for listening to the first ever podcast. This was a lot of fun for me. I
had fun.
I had a lot of fun. I hope that this was fun for you guys. You know, we're going to be doing a lot of these. Stay tuned. Once again, subscribe, like, comment, share. You know, post us on your Twitters, post us on your Instas, post us on your MySpace. And it's going to be a really fun time making these podcasts and making these courses and talking to, you know, some special guests that we can't announce now, but that are going to be on. And we're super excited. We hope you're excited. Do you have any parting words?
I would just like to say, stay safe in this troubling time, and love your pasta.
Yeah, and just before we go, I'd love to give some advice that my mom sort of passed down to me that I'd like to share with the rest of you guys, and that is to live Alfredo, to love Alfredo, to laugh Alfredo, to be Alfredo, to hug Alfredo, and to share Alfredo, and to see Alfredo, and to smell Alfredo too. It's a very important component of taste. and to taste Alfredo, and to love Alfredo, and to live it too. And not only that, but laugh it as well. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Great, man.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Stay tuned, everyone.